if we were to give an example of, a lawn, okay, we'll call this the lawn hypothesis. Let's imagine for a moment that we are in our garden and we look over and we notice that half of our grass is much longer than the other half. You notice that the shorter half is in the shade, and you take some time and you notice throughout the day that the shorter half spends more time in the shade than the other half. Your observation might lead to the thought that, hey, maybe sunlight affects the rate of growth of grass. So this idea is an explanation. Does it qualify as a hypothesis? Well, we have our subject, the grass, and we have our two variables, the amount of sunlight and the rate of growth. If we didn't have these variables, or we poorly framed it like stuff makes grass change, then at best, yeah, that's conjecture. It's not really a hypothesis at that stage. But once you qualify it a little bit more and are a bit more specific, that's when it starts becoming, a hypothesis. Now, you could regard conjecture as a bad or baseless hypothesis, but I would suggest that this might be valuing the use of scientific or technical language a little bit too much and forgetting the actual purpose of it. So even with the simplistic Google definition that we looked at earlier, it does sort of say starting point of investigation. So let me just read that out again. It says, a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. So if you don't have those variables, how can you be at the start of an investigation? Right? So even under that simplistic definition, conjecture doesn't actually qualify because it's not really a starting point. It's basically the bit before the starting point, I guess. So with the lawn hypothesis, we also note that it sort of has a predictive quality. If the hypothesis is supported, we would see a change in the rate of growth. Now, we should probably have made our hypothesis more specific. More sunlight increases the rate of growth, for example. So if this is supported, then we would expect an increase in sunlight to be proportional to the increase in the rate of growth. Once we've got these variables and predictions, the result of the prediction not coming true is essentially falsifying that hypothesis. It might mean that we have to refine our hypothesis a bit more, perhaps include various alternative hypotheses and different ways to examine this. Or in some cases, it might just be that, this is the only way that this particular thing might work, so it could be outright proven false. But as we know with sunlight, it can actually be the total amount of sun, and in comparison with other variables like the water and so on. Assuming we don't have this knowledge about, the grass and the sunlight and so on and so forth, we would probably spend some time refining and falsifying each alternative hypothesis until we found something that worked. Or perhaps we would falsify all alternative hypotheses and we'd end up at the null, which we will cover later.